Venezuela's spiraling cash crisis has worsened. Anger at the loss of the country's biggest currency note turned into widespread looting and several deaths. Our Arabella Munro reports.
Soldiers are out in force on the streets of Ciudad Bolivar in the south of the country. And so are armed men, guarding businesses against widespread looting. The socialist government's interior minister has blamed far-right supporters.
Acts of vandalism have been committed in the state of Bolivar. And why do we say they are acts of vandalism? Because they were orchestrated and planned by groups of the Venezuelan ultra-right. They've been contracted to generate violence and cause chaos in this city.
At least 5 people were shot dead in the turmoil, including a 14-year-old boy. Hundreds of others have been arrested. In this city alone, around 350 businesses have been looted. People are angry at the loss of the country's biggest bill, the 100 Bolivar note, worth just 2 cents. President Nicolas Maduro has extended the period it can stay in circulation, but critics say that's not going to help.
The new larger notes have only just now begun to arrive, so the new and old notes need to exist together. And that's the only solution we have right now in order to spare our country of yet another crisis.
The president recently pulled the 100 Bolivar note out of circulation. It accounts for nearly half of all notes and coins in Venezuela. He says criminals are hoarding the cash across the border in Colombia and profiting from the sale of subsidized goods. Delaying its withdrawal has stemmed some of the violence, but not all. The country's getting new banknotes, but introducing those has been slow. At a rally of faithful supporters, Maduro pointed the blame outside Venezuela.
We are being victimized by an international sabotage, so the new bills that are already ready can't be transferred to Venezuela, so I denounce it.
State TV says a shipment of 500 Bolivar notes has arrived, but the highest value of 20,000 bolivars isn't in circulation yet. That's worth less than $5 on the street. Venezuela's been in recession for 3 years and has one of the highest inflation rates in the world. And people there are suffering, not just from shortages of cash, but also food and medicine. Recent polls have put President Maduro's popularity at an all-time low of less than 20%. But the economic crisis is spiraling much faster. Arabella Munro, TRT World.
For more on this, Jorge Piedrahita joins us live from New York. He is the CEO of the Emerging Markets Investment Bank, Torino Capital. Jorge, thank you very much for joining us here on Money Talks. Now, President Nicolas Maduro has justified this measure as a way to sort of suffocate the mafia on the country's borders. But while he may be attempting to do just that, isn't he crippling his people even more?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me here. Absolutely. As you point out, this clearly has been hitting the core base of Chavista voters. Those are supporters of Maduro, simply because members of that base are low-income people that handle themselves, for the most part, with cash. So they were greatly affected, actually, with this measure. And while it might be the case that some mafias may have been handling themselves in cash with these bills, reality is that there was a miscalculation as to the impact of these measures. And honestly, we may not have seen the worst, at least in terms of disruption and economic activity, which is not to say that social disturbances will continue. We think that the government likely at this point have a better handle into the situation of some cities and has or is in a position of stopping any further looting that may happen.
Okay, now President Maduro has been urging Venezuelans to use electronic transactions instead of cash. But another reality is that nearly half the population don't even have bank accounts. So how does this request even make sense?
Well, there is a contradiction on itself based on what you just mentioned. What they are trying to do is they are trying to ease the requirements to open bank accounts so that more people get to be part of that electronic funds access. Having said that, that is a longer process and it's not going to be a solution over the next few days or over the next few weeks at all. But over the longer run, he may be on to something. As we may know, these sort of initiatives are not the first time that we hear about them. We heard about something in India some time ago, although with a complete different angle in our opinion.
Let's talk about some broader solutions. What can President Nicolas Maduro actually do to raise some much-needed cash for the country? What are his options here?
Well, if we are talking about just the bolivars, all they can do is try to accelerate the delivery of bolivars into the country, which, as we know, are printed outside Venezuela. Unfortunately, that process is going to be a slow process. Only about 13 million bills of 500 bolivars arrived the country on Sunday, and a lot more is clearly needed. Having said that, when we look at just the cash that the government needs, that is probably a process that may take several months because the distribution of these funds is going to be done through the banking system. And then in addition to that, there are a lot of other things that need to be coordinated. For instance, ATMs need to be calibrated for the new bills and so on. And that is a process that on itself will take several weeks to do it throughout the country.
All right, Jorge Piedrahita joining us live from New York. Thank you very much for joining us here on Money Talks.